All right. So today we're going to be doing a difficulty tier list slash who should you pick up if you're just starting out with the Guilty Gear Strive. Now with the ranked update coming out, which has been really good and a massive improvement, and with Strive 2.0 on the horizon, a lot of people are coming into my chat and they're wondering, who should I pick up? What is a good character to start with? Can I pick up any character? And so first, I'm going to give you guys just the basic rundown and my go-to pick on how to, like, who to pick. And then if you want to go into the details, then you can keep watching. The most important thing in Guilty Gear, all of them, not just Strive, is you need to have a character you love. That said, you don't necessarily need to find the character you love right away, right? It's very hard to find the first, character and like, this is my perfect one. How would you know that that's the character? It's perfectly fine to swap around. But if you ever have the question, is Happy Chaos, Asuka, or Potemkin, or whatever, is this really a good first character, or should I play someone else? I would say, generally, you should just play the character you like, especially if the playstyle looks cool to you, and not just them visually. And then just, keep on going, because no character in this game is, like, insanely hard, and only, like, 3 or 4 standouts that we'll get to are like what I would say not recommended, but you can still pick them if that's what you're looking for. But if you've never played a fighting game before, they're going to be hard to start with, and you're not going to win a lot, but you can still have fun very early, right? The most important thing is to have a good mindset and to, learn and practice properly, and then any character will be, not that hard to learn. Generally, you could use any controller, you can use any keyboard, PlayStation 5 pad, hitbox, stick, anything kind of works for this game. Okay, so the first off, just to go ahead, the best character to pick up if you're a noob who just wants to learn the game is Kai. Kai is easy to pick up, and he teaches fundamentals, and this is the axis we'll use, right? Before I've used like easy to learn, hard to master, but this tier list is going to be more focused on which is the best character to pick up and who teaches you, like skills that you can transfer to other characters. If you're only dead set on maining one character, then this doesn't matter too much. Like this axis doesn't matter too much. Then it's probably just best to look like, which one is high, which one is low. But if you're interested in like, okay, maybe I'll start with Kai, and then once I've learned a little bit of Kai, maybe now I realize that I want to play Ram instead, and it's pretty easy to go to Geo, and it's pretty easy to go to Millia. Like, it's a good starting character. On the other hand, a character that is really hard, can be both universally hard, but he can also be like, very specific. Like all you're doing is focusing on the very, very character specific stuff, and you're not really focusing on fundamentals much. So for example, one of this is Goldlewis. Goldlewis is a character that like, he's not that bad to pick up, but he's very focused on character specific stuff, right? The only real issue with Goldlewis is that you have to learn a lot, and I mean a lot of like half circle motions. If you're not comfortable with half circles, especially if you play on hitbox, then he can be pretty annoying to learn. I would recommend this character for the most part. Like he's a lot easier if you play stick or, use D-pad or analog just to start out with, but like he's not even close to one of the hardest. He's just like annoying to pick up, and then once you've picked him up, he has a pretty easy learning curve, and especially like top level play, he is a very easy character, because this is another big thing. Some characters have to play a lot of different matchups differently, and some characters can play a lot of matchups similarly, and Goldlewis is one of the characters that can play almost every matchup pretty similarly. So that obviously helps when you only need to learn one big flowchart instead of like 400. Soul is another character that is pretty easy to pick up, and he still teaches you a lot of fundamentals, but I would probably say him about here, because there are some things that Soul doesn't teach you, and one of the big things is like he doesn't really emphasize like using projectiles and like keep away as much. It's pretty easy if you pick up Soul as your first character to kind of focus in really hard on just rushing your opponent down, which might not go well if you're trying to swap from Soul to some other character. He also has quite a bit of combo execution, unlike Kai, so it's going to take a bit longer to learn. But I would say he's still like pretty approachable. If you played other Shotos and other games, if you're a Ken player or that type of character, then he's a pretty easy pickup. Mei is interesting because she's charge, right? So she's charged and she doesn't really teach a lot of fundamentals. I would say she's about here where like she focuses a decent amount on like doing Mei shit and not like basic stuff, but she's not like crazy complicated or anything. She still plays a pretty general game plan, and a lot of other characters play like Mei, except they're not charged. Like they still, rush in. And obviously charge helps you go to other characters such as Leo, Venom, and Potemkin as well. But if you're scared of charge when playing Mei, don't be. She has like very easy charge. Like you would be surprised how easily you could learn Mei without ever having to play a charge character before. Next up, we have Axel. Axel is, I would say he's like here too. He's very easy to play. And especially if you're like on the lower floors, Axel's an incredibly broken character because Axel forces everyone to play his game. And, when you're starting out, that's incredibly hard to beat, right? And in general, this is one of those things where you're focusing on a very character-specific gameplay. You're only focusing on keep away pretty much. But that one, his keep away isn't that complicated. If you've played like Guile or any other keep out character, Dhalsim, then a lot of his shit will come pretty naturally. And pretty easy character, but don't pick him if you want to rush down. All right, Chipp. I would say Chipp is, somewhere here in the bottom left. Bottom right. Because he teaches you a decent amount of fundamentals, right? But the problem is that it's very easy to, get lost in how many different moves he has. And some of the difficulty with Chipp, outside of just having a lot of moves, is that he dies very easily. Like, if you screw up, he can actually die. He has a lot of different combo routes, especially now with rope. They aren't that hard in terms of like execution. You're not doing anything crazy hard lengths or anything. It's just a lot of moving parts, and dropping them can have bad consequences. He's also a lot about sequencing, like getting the first hit, wall breaking, getting the super, getting the Oki, getting the pressure. Like if you're dropping stuff all the time, then his game plan does break apart a little bit. Not as much as like resource characters or, some other characters with worse defense, but still definitely not the easiest to pick up, but not the hardest either. Kind of similar to Soul in many ways, where it's easier to just become, like a nut and just run in all the time. But on the other hand, you can be a nut with basically any Guilty Gear character. Potemkin, he's very easy to pick up. He's very character specific. I would heavily recommend against playing Pot unless you want to play Pot for the rest of your life, because he will teach you the game completely wrong, if I'm being honest. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's recommended against. And if you start with Pot, you might get some habits that are really hard to unlearn. Like I've met people that play Pot only and that like truly struggle to pick up other characters. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's probably not the best first character. He has Karas, he has like long motions, he has charge. He plays completely different from every other character due to being, not having a dash, not having an air dash. And then also because he's like one of the best, you can play him in the wrong way and get results for a very long time until you eventually start getting stuck. So I would say, he's not the best pickup for a lot of people, but if you want early results and you just care about playing the best, most broken character at every level, then Potemkin is it. And there's nothing really wrong in playing the best character and just picking him because he's broken. Faust is, he becomes very hard, but I would say Faust actually has a pretty good learning curve. And I would say he's about here in the middle, where the cool thing about Faust is I feel like Faust actually has the type of learning curve sometimes that other games have with better learning curves, where basically, in League, you pick one champion that's very easy, and then the difficulty is like managing your teammates and managing all the items and managing all the other factors that like change every time. And so with Faust, you can actually just like kind of go in, learn a couple things, and then as you keep tossing items, because he's an item character, you will, gradually just learn to play around them. And yes, you can lab these things, but a lot of these just take a lot of time and experience. So if you're a player who like likes a bit more complexity and you like a unique character, a weird character, but still likes to, spam games rather than necessarily lab like super specific setups and super high APM execution, I think Faust is a very good character. He's also a character that a lot of people just love playing, so that's why he's not lower and hard to pick up, because I do think that like how easily you can have fun is a really big deal for people to pick up. Millia. Millia is actually not that bad. She's just fast, really. She's fast and she's airborne, but she's not that bad actually. She doesn't use too many different strategies and moves either. But she's kind of like Chipp, I guess, where it's like, if you screw up, then you kind of die. But, speedster, mix-up character. Tons of different mix-ups you can learn, but you can get away with using a couple only. Pretty good character if you want to play like a fast character. Transfers decently well, I would say. So I'm going to put here. Because if you want to play like Millia and then you want to play another, not necessarily another game and another character in this game, but if you want to play, 2SKO or Marvel Tokon, there's always going to be a speedster character. There's always going to be an air demon type character. Zato. Zato is like here. He's not actually all the way to the bottom left, because Zato does still use normals. He does still use like air movement. He doesn't just use his like, character specific thing only. You actually do play a lot of basic, footsies and keep away with him. And at the core, you can actually play Zato pretty basic, and then just like learn a couple Oki setups, and you'll get pretty far with that. His negative edge is super like daunting when you're beginning, so that's why he's at the bottom. But I will say that he's not the hardest character to get going. Like the negative edge stuff is insanely hard in the beginning, but once you get a handle on it, there's actually a lot of shortcuts you can use, such as like using a negative edge with FD. So you can hold the FD button and a negative edge. Dust doesn't do anything, so you can press dust, 5D, 2D, jumping D, and then press any button, and that helps a lot with the difficulty. And because his Oki setups are so good in a lot of cases, you can kind of like do them and relax. You don't have to like change on the fly as much, which does help. But he's still gonna be like about here, still very hard to pick up. And there also is not a puppet character like him in the rest of the game, so you're not really having a lot of transferable skills in one sense. And he's definitely like a top 3 hardest characters to pick up. So he is one of the characters where like not recommended, but it's possible. If you want to play a puppet character, he is one of the sickest puppet characters of all time. Sato's how is Zato on hitbox? He's completely fine on hitbox. The difficulty with Zato is not in his motion. Okay, Ram. Ram is easy to pick up and teaches a decent amount of fundamentals. She mostly just lets you do like the Chipp thing, where Chipp thing where like you kind of run at them, and she kind of lets you play like keep away, almost like Axel. She's very strong, and she's very like, you can jump, you can be on the ground, you can run in, you can keep away. Everything kind of works. And she also denies your opponent a lot of like their tools, so she kind of simplifies the match in a way, which is helps a lot. But I would say now that she has sword as a kind of a resource, you have to know which sword you have left You have to wait for it to come back. This is gonna struggle with a lot of people. You know, how are they gonna do the combo when they don't have one of the swords? How do I convert when I only have one? How do I do it when I have 2 versus 0, etc. That's really it though. And she, you know, at top level, she's still really easy just because of that. Doesn't have like super hard execution either. Leo is easy, but not max easy because he is still charged, and you do have to learn how to go between 2 stances. But he's a lot easier than Soul in a lot of ways. I'll probably put down Soul about here because he doesn't really have combo difficulty, and he doesn't really have like super punishing windows or anything. Very straightforward character, but he is also like a charge character. So, and you can't really jump that much with him, so you have to get comfortable with the ground game. He can help, but it doesn't teach as much fundamentals as Soul. So maybe he's here because Wake Up DB being charged is super new friendly. I guess that's true, but it's kind of like 50-50 almost. It's like some people love Wake Up Charge and some people hate it. Nago. Nago is a very specific character who's actually... He's weird. So I'm going to put him like here. But he's another one of those characters that if you're just starting out, he can be pretty frustrating because he has the Blood Rage mechanic where if you actually just screw up and Blood Rage, you can lose the entire match for it. But once you get past that point, he's very, very easy. And he plays very similar in almost every matchup. So it's kind of like he has one difficult thing, which is like the first beginning of like, how do I play with a resource? And how do I manage to not pop? As soon as you manage that, you know, it's pretty easy. But yeah, it's kind of weird because I would, you know, this is one of those things where like it can be very frustrating, I think, for a first-time player to just blood rush all the time. But if you're not doing that, then you're probably having a great old time. Geo is also up here. She does teach you like just basics pretty well, but she's very one note, so she doesn't really do keep away stuff, just like Soul, and she kind of just, you know, jumps in and dashes in, and then like you try to, you know, whiff punish a bit, but it's not really anything super crazy either. She has some long combos, but they're not that hard, and for the most part, you can get away with playing her super basically. If you play Cammy or a Street Fighter character, this is a great pick. Anji is another super easy character who kind of only focuses on his own thing. I'll probably put him here, actually. Anji kind of plays the game for you. And he's also very forgiving because he has so much high health. Just lets you kind of, you know, play rock, paper, scissors versus anyone at any skill level. Has the same game plan in every single matchup, which is like a massive, massive benefit, right? If there was one character that is the easiest in this game, it would easily be Anji. Because he does, you know, is in charge. He doesn't have any hard combos. He doesn't have like almost anything to think about regarding like who he's facing compared to most. Obviously, there's still some. It's still a fighting game. You still have to think about like, oh, Potemkin can grab me out of spin, and you know this move I can't spin, blah blah blah. But like, he does really simplify the game a lot. But on the other hand, that's really all he does. So if you're not into the spin game plan, you're not really being taught fundamentals. Nothing about spin can be transferred to another character. So not to recommend really if you're trying to learn other characters, but if you're dead set on playing Anji, then yeah, hell yeah. Ino. I think Ino is probably down here because she has unique movement. And she focuses on pretty specific things, but She does have a pretty simple game plan. You don't really have to learn that much about like strike, throw, and stuff like that. You can kind of just go high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, and then randomly throw. And she kind of naturally does everything. She also is one of those characters that has a very simplistic game plan. Doesn't change that much from different characters, but changes a bit more than some. So that's why she's lower than Nago. But, you know, not the hardest, but awkward. She's a hover dash character. If you don't know what that is, that's basically just means when you dash, you start air dashing from the ground. She cannot dash on the ground at all. She can only fly, which means she gets mixed up from everything, but also means, you know, she can't dash into a button. Jacko is, you know, she's known for being the like baby puppet character, and I think that still fits pretty well. If you want to play like a slightly harder character, that's still, you know, kind of like Faust. You can kind of like learn a couple things and then get going into matches very quickly and then just kind of learn on the fly. She's a really good pick for that. Yeah, I think the problem with Jacko is like she doesn't really teach you a lot of other things. She's really focused on like two different normals, which is 2K and 2D, and then just throwing minions. So she's not really gonna help you that much with other things. But you know, if you want to play a more complicated character, but you don't quite want to go Zato, Happy Chaos, or Asuka, then this is a good pick. Speaking of Happy Chaos, I would say Happy Chaos is like maybe he's probably the second hardest to pick up. He doesn't have negative edge like Zato though. And he plays a bit more normally than other characters too. He has the same benefit of like so I would say Happy Chaos has weirdish harder execution for a beginner because you have to pull away the gun, put out the gun. You have to manage 2 different resources instead of 1, and the resources don't auto refill, for bullets. So you do have you can't actually empty out your mag and then okay, I have to find a place to reload now and have to do completely different combos that give me reload. It's not insanely hard or anything, but it does take a long time, and you also can't block when you have the reticle out, which is when he has his gun out. So that also changes things, and the meter can go up quickly and it can go down slower depending on if you have focus buff or not. Curse changes things. In the latest patch, he also became more reliant on basically a 1.5 frame link. It's 2 different links that are very hard. And in general, he's also very easy to, if he screws up, then he dies because people will backdash you, and then you kind of lose. His setups are a bit harder to do. You don't have to lab as much as Zato, but you do have to be more ready on the fly, and you have to adapt a bit more to oh, I'm playing against a DP character, now I do a different, now I have to bait DP manually. If I play against someone with a broken backdash, then I have to chase that manually. Zato kind of ignores these things, but he has more prep work to do instead. But whichever character of Zato, Asuka, and Chaos, which are the easy top 3, you're gonna have the most difficulty learning is really up to you. I wouldn't say any of them are to recommend to start with because they all kind of focus on their own thing and can be hard to move to a different one. But I would say Chaos is probably the one that's easiest to move on from, just because he does still, he uses normals the most, and he doesn't use character specific Oki only. He does still do a regular strike or a throw a bit more. Baiken is easy to pick up, but focuses on a lot of character specific things. She's kind of slightly harder than Mei in my opinion. She has some really good go-to buttons from air and from the ground. You know, far slash from the ground, 2H if you want to chase someone, JS in the air for air to airs, and JH if they're below you. Very easy meter spends, pretty simple like game plan, but she does have some specific things, especially when it comes to using her parry. Her parry does require actually knowing what your opponent does to use effectively, which is not really true for like Leo, SDP, and other DPs in this game, or Pop Buster. You can kind of throw them out randomly, and purely based on that, you will get a lot of wins. But Baiken, I would say, it's a bit more about knowing when to throw out the parry to start with, and especially her guard cancel parry, which was added, you know, a couple patches ago, is something you actually have to, like, you know, I have to know what this character's string looks like. But, you know, still pretty simplistic character, pretty one-note playstyle in every matchup too. Testament. Testament is, I would say, like maybe up here. Pretty easy to pick up. Not as easy as Ram, but has a very nice learning curve where you can kind of zone. This is a zoner mid-range character, and the gameplay is pretty simple for the most part, but it is a couple steps process. So you have this crow, which affects stain, which changes how your normals pop, and you also have to, you know, actually get the crow on them, which is used by setting a fireball first, usually knowing specific combos that apply it, and obviously teleport is a pretty tricky move to use when you're just starting out. So overall, a pretty good pick, pretty easy, pretty fun. Not too many different combo routes as well, and their mix-ups are pretty easy to just do. Like, she doesn't. Sorry, they don't have that many different mix-ups, and you know the basics carry you very far. And then as you get better, you can keep adding stuff, but it's not like you need to know these 5 things in order to start playing the character at all. Bridget, I would say is about here with Millia and Faust. Like pretty middle of the road difficulty, pretty punishing if you screw up, low damage as well, very sequence based, but has long range normals, has a fireball of sorts, has a DP, great backdash. You can kind of place yourself, move the character where you want. You don't have to think too actively on where you stand. So very easy to pick up and very easy to, you know, get going with. Sin is probably over here. Second easiest character while still teaching you fundamentals, I would say. Doesn't have a fireball, and he has a couple like character specific things because it's a stamina gauge. So maybe he should be here. But he's so easy. So I kind of want to put him here. Yeah, like stamina is not as hard of a resource as you might think, because it's kind of one of those things where either you can convert or you don't. And as soon as you learn to count, like if you have 1, 2, or 3, or 0, then you kind of just do less if you have lower. And then when you have more, then you know you can do more types of specials, longer combos, etc. You know, reversal super, reversal DP, great backdash, great easy to use normals. Very straightforward game plan. You just play like a long range mid range character. You don't really change your playstyle that much depending on matchups. If you play other fighting games, he's like easily one of the best characters to pick up. Okay, next up we have the Bedman. Where do we put Bedman? Bedman is high health, so can't be too hard. And pretty forgiving in terms of like screwing up a little bit, doesn't hurt too much, but they're weird. So I would still probably put them like here. Also very unique movement. Yeah, like slightly below Baiken. Because I would say the harder Baiken, I don't know, are they here? Maybe they're here, yeah. Because it's just so weird. Like when you're starting out, you might not really understand how the arrows work. Like which special you use first, then activates the responding error a couple seconds later. But when you're starting out, it can be really hard to keep track of this. And they also have completely unique movement with flight, just like Zato. But it's pretty sluggish, so until you start getting a good hold on it, it's pretty hard. Doesn't teach you a lot of fundamentals, but teaches you a lot of, you know, Bedman specific stuff. And there's not too many things to learn, which helps a lot, I think. So maybe we put them here just because, like, yeah, we'll probably put them here actually, because Faust and Nago are more punishing when you learn them, and Bridget's lower health. Okay, Asuka. Asuka is maybe the most unfriendly to pick up character that I have seen in fighting games, like modern fighting games. Basically, the problem with Asuka and learning Asuka first is that getting his basic stuff down is really hard and takes a long time, and you don't really have time to be slow in this game. You do actually have to like learn how to, you know, use spells quickly, and you just have a longer move list than everyone else. Like you have like 40 spells or whatever in 3 different decks. And you know, he doesn't really get any easier either with like just a little bit of time. The thing is though that once you finally do master Asuka card stuff, he becomes very like on rails almost. Like you're obviously looking at his deck, which is RNG, and you're always like adapting to which cards you get, but you're not looking at your opponent much at all. Easily one of the least like interactive characters in any fighting game too, where you're kind of just looking down at your deck and you kind of making decisions mostly based on that, compared to other characters that do their decisions mostly based on what their opponent is doing, like where their opponent is, stuff like that. He also has very high health, but he can lose all of his health if he screws up. So if you screw up, then you will also be the lowest health character who also can't, you know, do their purpose. So not necessarily a super hard character at top level, in my opinion. Well, even mid-level, but getting from low level to mid-level is absolutely brutal. And he teaches you basically nothing about playing any other character until you get to like at least high-level gameplay. Yeah, so these 3 are the ones I don't recommend, with 1 extra coming later, but they're all possible. If you love, you know, the roguelite, the RNG aspects of Asuka, if you love puppet characters, or if you just love shooting people, don't demonetize me, YouTube. Then Happy Chaos is good. Salt is good for puppet characters. Asuka's obviously the card simulator. Johnny. I would say Johnny's like... He's like here. Where like... He has very unique movement. And he requires some execution. But once you get past that... Probably here. Yeah. Once you get past that, he's pretty fucking simple. But, you know, he does not teach you really how to play the game overall. So maybe you should be here, actually. You kind of just do Johnny shit for a large majority of it. Some of that stuff is like, well, you strike or throwing. But the thing is that Johnny strikes or throws in a very unique way compared to everyone else. So it's not necessarily just because you're good at doing strike throw with Johnny, you can easily transfer it over to, you know, Geo. Also needs misfighting cancels. You know, if you play stance cancel characters, you know that can be like APM intensive when you're starting out. Doing Tiger Knees is very core to his game plan. Elphelt. Elphelt is also all the way over here. Very easy to pick up. Much like Anji, 1 special moves does the offense for you. And just like simplifies the game a lot. But Has a little bit less health than Anji and Pot. That's why she is not quite, the same difficulty. But she's also like very far to the left because learning to mix someone up with Elphelt does not mean that you can mix someone up with any other character, because they are kind of like a, instant. Anji and Elphelt are kind of like instant noodles of cooking. You kind of instantly get to a certain point, and that's just all you get, and they're all never terrible, but you kind of stuck there. So I would say in general, like, fine, they're fine. Elphelt's fine to start with, but you do kind of like limit yourself if you want to learn like fundamental gameplay. But if you're not interested in that, if you just want to have fun, then she's not a bad pick. Abba. Abba is actually one of the weirder characters to play. Surprisingly hard, I would say. Much in the sense of Chipp, or a character like Jacko, where they're kind of sequence based. But you do kind of play two different characters, which adds to the difficulty. And in general, I would say that, like, very punishing to drop combos with. Very, very punishing. If you don't hit the end of your combo, then you might not... Like, sometimes you might just as well not combo them at all. But she's also a character that benefits a lot from your opponent making mistakes. So if your opponent's not very good at the game, then she just naturally gets better as well. So very strong character at low level, but, takes a little bit to learn. Slayer. Some people might think that Slayer is all the way up here. I actually think Slayer is more of a character that's like here. Very easy to play. Should I have Johnny here? Yeah, I should probably have Johnny and Goldlewis on the same axis, because they're both just like focusing on their own thing. No, Goldlewis is easier because he doesn't have to tie. Yeah, it's a little easier. You kind of randomly spin your stick with the Goldlewis. Slayer. Slayer needs different things to learn from other characters, but kind of just like Anji. I should have them here. Kind of just like Anji, Elphelt. Slayer has dial mix. You can kind of spam the dash button and you will naturally mix them. You can use Dandy randomly and you will mix them. Very, very easy character. As soon as you learn the very basics, you kind of play the same against most characters. You have a very, very easy game plan. You go in and you blow shit up, either yourself or your opponent. And as a rule, has some harder execution stuff, but you get very far away without using any hard things at all. So maybe maybe Slayer is a bit harder than Geo at like absolute top level execution wise, but Slayer makes up for it in just playing a less dynamic and interesting playstyle. So kind of just has a very simple playstyle, but does not have regular movement, needs Karas a little bit if you want to get to high level. If you're just lower mid level, then no Karas is probably fine. The jump dash cancel is not hard, but it has a learning curve. Like, it takes a little bit until you can do it, and mid level players and even high level players sometimes mess it up, but messing it up is not massively punishing all the time, so it's not too bad. Dizzy. I would say Dizzy is somewhere here in the middle, where she kind of teaches you some fundamentals, like some spacing, some zoning, some rush down because she's very fast, but she's pretty awkward and she's very sequence based, just like Abba, where if you don't get your sequences right, if you don't get your setups, then she kind of falls off a cliff strength wise. But she has some really big buttons that just make her really easy to use in that sense. Like Michael's sword covers the entire screen. The icicle kind of covers the entire screen now. Very active. Not too bad. Not too bad. Venom. Venom is actually borderline as hard as these characters to pick up, but he's not quite. And he's kind of a little bit like Faust, where I would say Venom is easier to get to a point where you're enjoying things than these three characters. And you can play Venom and while playing him, learn how the balls interact. You don't actually have to like lab everything out ahead of time. You can kind of naturally start creating sequences and just use a couple of them. You don't have to know all, 10 pre-planned sequences. That's not really how he's played. He's probably the second or the fourth hardest character to pick up. So if you're just starting out and you want to have a good time, he's probably the character I would not recommend because he's also charged, and he is not charged like the other charged characters in this game. He is hard charge. You have to charge constantly with him while also like doing other things. So you're kind of like, it puts a lot more stress on your hands if you don't, if you think it's annoying to charge. And you have to always basically default to holding down back whenever possible, which isn't easy when you're just starting out. Unika is very easy. Very easy. Has some card cancels, so she's not like at the top, but she's probably here with Leo. Doesn't teach you as many. Maybe it's like this. Oh, no, her offense is like more unique. Huh? She kind of plays RPS. She is a little bit of she's maybe a little bit of this. Just not nearly as bad. And all of her mix-ups and stuff like that, it's kind of rooted in mix-ups that are just normal. But it's a little bit of the Anji Elphelt thing where like you can do her cancel, so her install, and then you press the low or the high button, and you can get really far with just doing that. She was made for a lot of people, new to pick up the game. She's a little slow, but she has universal type movement. She doesn't have unique movement at all. And despite being slow, she has pretty good threat range at all times. So unless you're playing against Axel or Happy Chaos, you generally don't feel too slow. Lucy. I think Lucy is... A lot of people have been saying this character's hard. I actually don't think she's hard. I think she's just bad, which is not the same thing. Like, yes, you can't mess up if you want to win, but like if this character was good, I think she'd be very easy. I think she's basically like an easier Bridget, Testament. Slightly harder than Testament, but like easier than Bridget. Kind of in the cross section between the two. Has a little bit of Chipp in her, where she's very fast. But she doesn't really do any crazy mix up with the speed. She doesn't really fly in the air or anything. She keeps it pretty grounded, and she mostly just uses Farsight 2S and 5H in neutral. And a Rekka, of course. Doesn't have a lot of specials. It really feels like it's missing a couple. But yeah. I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the YouTube comments. I can take a couple of Twitch chat questions if there's anything I missed. Again, remember, this is not meant for top level. I think my previous list works perfectly well for top level. But if you're interested in like low level, then this is the list, right? Is she really that hard? She is, because she's wonky. A lot of her normals are weird, and if you want to maximize her, you need to know like very long sequences. Doesn't Ram also have car cancels? Kind of. They just dash cancels though. So all you really do for car cancels with her is you Rekka, like you do Rekka, and then you press the dash button and the other special. It's not really the same difficulty for most people as doing like pot Karas or like actual like things that you have to do faster. Even like dash cancel with Unika is generally seen as harder because she doesn't rely on them as much. Is Faust that easy? Not a top level, but to get to a level where you can play your entire game plan and have fun, he's very easy. Or like he's much easier. In pure difficulty, he is probably closer down here in my opinion. But in practice, again, this is a list meant for new players. I think he's very easy to get going with. I was scared to learn May because my brain doesn't do well with charge, but now I'm going to try hard with her. Sounds good. Doesn't Alpha need to play neutral? No. She kind of a lot of Elphelt players just spam the fireball or the butt slam or the bomb where you jump over them. So hard just because of non-auto time routes. It's not actually just because of that too, but like yes, Sol has combo routes that are much harder than Kai's. Like he does different combos in the corner versus in mid screen to a bigger degree. He has more different types of confirms. Confirming his vortex is very punishing if you do it wrong. But it's also that Sol, because he has less range, he likes to win from defense a lot, which naturally is harder for someone picking the game up. And he plays around the opponent. Like, played properly, Sol actually plays around the opponent a lot. He kind of picks, his spots around the opponent's defense and then goes in and, like, maximizes her score through that. Which is a bit harder than playing Testament, Ram, Sin, or Kai, where you kind of just do this and you're like, this, fuck you, deal with this, deal with this, deal with this, deal with this, stun dipper, like Elkhant, sword toss. How is Slam different than Elkhant then? Okay, I see that. Yeah, he's also easy to pick up. Sin just teaches you fundamentals a little bit better. I think Testament might be lower. She doesn't have an easy answer for defense, which can be a struggle for a new player. Geo doesn't have a reversal either. Neither does Slayer. I don't think not having a reversal is that hard for a new player because you naturally get out and, Testament has a broken backdash, so it's not that bad. Good, rare beginner video. Again, I'm sorry if you guys wanted like a top level discussion, but I think there's a lot of people getting into Strive recently, so I wanted to make like one video that's focused on like beginners. The rare one video. Also get myself a bit more used to the mindset of like, oh, how do I do educational content? Stuff like that. How do you even go about learning characters at the bottom? That is a really good question, actually. The question is, how do you learn? How do you start? And in my opinion, you should, when you're playing a resource character, they usually go on the way of like, they can do a lot when their resource is high, or they have their shit set up, like when Testament has Stain, when Sin has Eat, or all the way from like when Asuka has his best cards, when Zato has Eddie, when Chaos has Focus Buff and 6 bullets, right? So what I think is the best is to start with the no resource combos. Start with the things you can do always. So with Asuka, that is just like 2K2D, draw card, right? Or 2K2D, throw card. Far/5H, draw or throw card. With Zato, it's far/ or 2S in my hell. And then with Chaos, it's 2K2D gun flip. It's I guess Chaos doesn't have as many of these, but like 5K2D gun flip, 2S shot 2D. Stuff like that is probably your best way to pick up like the things you do when you have no resources is a good end to start with. Then you go, after you know how to play with no resources, you go and like how to get back your resources. You know how does Eddie get back? How do I draw cards with Asuka? How do I reload my bullets with Chaos? Now I can do 2K2D concentration with Chaos. Now I would say learn like one or two things that you can do with your resource. So this could also be with Abba. In Jealousy Rage, I do, low versus overhead, right? With Dizzy, I'm stalling for my Wings of Light to start, or like I know one left-right setup with the fishes. With Zato, it's like, okay, I know how to do 2D versus 5D plus Frog. With Asuka, it's like, okay, I know how to throw cards in test case 1 quicker and then like strike or throw in between the cards. With Chaos, it's like I can 5D or roll plus gunshot. And then you go back and you're like, okay, let me learn one more situation on how to, get into my good situation where I can run my 50-50 mix-up. And then when you get everything around it sorted, it becomes a lot easier to play. And then you can start, gradually you'll bridge the gaps between like, oh, well, now I realize I do actually have a lot of resources, right? And so then you can learn a high resource combo. So, or a I wouldn't say high. You don't want all bullets for chaos, for example. You want something that works when you have like starting amount or like half gauge. So let me spend like 2 bullets or 3 bullets. Let me do a counter hit combo. Not a what if my best possible situation happens. And then you kind of keep on building like that. And you kind of try to see the fun in failing and, learning and just going on and on like that. Because you will fail a lot more if you play one of the hardest characters in the beginning than one of the easiest characters. Okay, I think I'm going to raid Jonathan and I need to go. Long ass stream today. Hope you enjoyed.